are competing in, we are repeating in, we are believing in. It's time for us to shift our mind from best in the world to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional,
you want me to mute myself
take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.
And we're live. Welcome to Best for the World broadcast. I'm Captain Future Michael Sillion, and I'm here with Gen Zendahl for a Zoom call where we're going to talk about anything that comes up between us. So I met Jen first in Kiev, Ukraine, during the Emerge Festival in September 2019. And we've been kind of friends online since that. So hello, Jen, and welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, yeah, welcome to the whole space, actually. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, Michael, we met in 2019 in Kiev. We had no idea what was going to be ahead for us and for Kiev at that time even. And I don't recall playing the Glass Bead game, but that was one of the reasons.
I missed that session. I missed the live session there.
But that's really, so I was really there as an artist for the Metamodern Arts Festival, which ran alongside the Emerge thing, and just got really involved with all the amazing people there and the really, really interesting discussions we were having. But that's where I first played what's called the Glass Bead Game, and this is where Michael and I we played it so much through the pandemic, and it's really been formative for me in how I've continued with my philosophical inquiry, how I've worked with the idea about games and what games mean in our lives, and how games support us and playing supports us. I'm thinking about choices as well. So it's kind of quite interesting that this session that you're doing, Michael, is about choosing and quite how we make choices and how that pans out in our lives and what that means for us.
Exactly. So the theme of we do a 48-hour broadcast with a general theme of choosing wisely, and we do a lot of 45-minute sessions for not 48 in total, but almost. And there've been all kinds of sessions here. We actually did a live Glass Bead game here in the studio. If you're interested to get an introduction, if you haven't seen it before, I'll put the link in the comments to this video. And we talked about sustainability, leadership, regenerative soil, and a lot of that kinds of conversation. We had the live yoga session and stuff like that. And like Jen said, I've been hanging out online for the last 4 years. And I met Jen many times in our Glass Bead game sessions on Zoom, and you're welcome to join there as well. But we had many warm talk about being yourself and leading towards the future and what is going on there. And it's been a fantastic thing to do with you, Jen. So what are you looking forward to towards what you're doing right now?
So, I mean, using the Glass Bead game as a basis, because it's what the Glass Bead game did for me is, and it's interesting that you're talking about choices, is it enabled us to design a space where we explored in a way rather than I mean, there were choices involved, like where you choose a topic or what have you, but the way the game is designed is it's a very open space. We explore language in a collective way, and in a way where perhaps the ego is kind of put on the back burner. It's a very collective meaning making game. So it's almost about I can't say reducing choices. It's about making absolute choices not so important, but going into an exploration space. So what I discovered with the game, and I've discovered with life, applying that, is that when we decide what we want, we're closing down to a lot of opportunities and ideas that might have come up otherwise. So it's about finding a way of working with meaning, working collectively, not that you don't make choices, but not making too many choices too soon. It's allowing game and play and exploration to open up the field. And I think there's a really interesting guy by the name of John Vervaeke, and he's done all sorts of super series online. There's a big YouTube thing he did about the meaning crisis, and he talks about something called reciprocal opening, and that's about finding making some decisions or designing things so that your arena stays as much open as possible. So if we make decisions, choices which are closing down our arena, or we're deciding where we need to be at the end, we're kind of closing down our minds to a lot of opportunity and perhaps some collective work together where different perspectives might come up with something surprising, new, exciting, playful, what have you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and an arena in this case refers to the agent-arena relationship. An agent is a person or an organization or something that makes an action or a choice. An arena is where this then takes place as an event, and this arena could be like a physical place or like a mental place or like a Zoom call or whatever for that action happen that the agent or agents inside that arena are involved with. So
yeah, of course. And of course, there are all sorts of different arenas. So you can say somebody's life is an arena. So each individual human being has an arena of activity. So we've got our life with our families, our communities, our own personal lives, our interior lives. So we've got that. And then, of course, it overlaps with the people close to us and those that meet us. And of course, the overlap gets bigger and bigger until we're into, our collective spaces as nations and groups, and the largest arena of all is our planet. So we've got varying places where we want to be able to act, and to be able to have as much free. I suppose it's about the reciprocal opening, is about designing how we do things and how we think about things to keep options open, and to have as much freedom to act and to be aware of opening those spaces for acting in.
Yeah, me and my friend are talking what we call the O zone, the opportunity zone. So to keeping like the mind open for which opportunity shows up, and like we have saying like 2 minutes to action. If someone calls you and you have 2 minutes to decide to go on a thing or join a thing or digital or physical, and having that mindset to be ready to make a decisions within 2 minutes. It's not like practically 2 minutes, could be a day or a week.
Yeah.
But like having that mindset, the call to action. If some opportunity shows up that you didn't know of in advance, but you're prepared to jump into opportunities.
That sounds really fun. That sounds great. And I think that's what it's about. It's about getting, you would use the term flexible, and it's about becoming, we can get scared about doing things because we put perhaps too much onto it. So having that kind of fun attitude of, can I fit it in? I mean, like this call, we just decided to do this, I don't know, an hour ago maybe, or what have you.
Exactly an hour ago.
And it's just like, oh yeah, why not? Okay. it doesn't have to be, I don't need to worry. We can play with it. We can get
we have no
used
script.
to that.
We didn't know what we were going to talk about.
It's just being prepared to play.
Yeah.
Because you don't put too many high stakes on it. You don't make it too stressful. And we all do a better job when we're like that. If we're relaxed and we're easygoing and we're not fretting about getting it right or achieving any sort of huge end goal, we actually achieve a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more fun.
Exactly. And Mia and Stian talked about this, like, if you're excited for a thing like this instead of stress, it tells when you show up on an event. If you look stressed and nervous and stuff like that, but if you're playful and excited for what, even you don't know what's going to happen, but you can tell by a person's energy they're excited for the unknown.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how many of our listeners have played the Glass Bead game, but that's one of the such fun things about the game, is that you don't get warned in advance. I mean, maybe if you're a magister or a curator, you've kind of decided a few ideas in advance, but even then sometimes that doesn't happen. So the topic just comes up. It might be something like death or history or love or whatever. Some topic comes up, and then you just have to play with it together as a group.
Yeah,
and
exactly. You just show up and anticipating anything to happen.
Yeah. And it's not just that, but then you're navigating and playing with all sorts of other people's ideas. So even with just a small group of 6 people, all the different perspectives all get chucked in together. As long as people play well and they have this kind of, there's a certain frame of mind, a certain easiness, a certain playfulness with the ideas. And the idea that we're trying to find something new, we're trying to discover something together that might be new or surprising or fun. Suddenly that arena we were talking about earlier, suddenly it opens up into a huge space. And you think, wow, where could we go with this? Whereas if you get something, I mean, I've been on many debates online and what have you, and it's extremely narrow. You get 2 or 3 people with that they've got very fixed views and they're defending, and you've got this you've got this place where everyone's already decided in advance what they believe and just basically bicker about it in a polite way. And it's just, sometimes once you've been playing the Glass Bead game for a while and you understand how much fun and how generative it is, you go to a traditional debate and you think, my gosh, this is such a bore.
Yeah. What are we learning here today? Nothing. And we don't even have fun.
And then the poor people at the end who've been like sitting there for an hour listening to people arguing their points of view, which they decided before they came. You might get someone who actually wants to voice a little idea of their own, and maybe it's not a question in the formal way, and you think, oh dear, you poor creatures, you've just gone through all this and you get to say 2 or 3 words and the speaker doesn't even answer the question properly or recognize what you're trying to say. It just seems to me a sad situation to be in.
And we talked a lot about that, like especially in the political landscape, but even meetings. I've done Glass Bead Day live in person. I had opened 2 meetings here in my hometown Halmstad with people who seldom do even any workshops or dialogue exercise at all, and they felt really, really like energized and excited about what this new form could do for just a boring meeting.
Yeah. I mean, it is tremendous. And what I'm excited about now is I'm working on, so we played the Glass Bead game pretty intensively right through the pandemic, and we have people from Australia, the States, Africa, India. We had people all over the world joining us for games. It was hugely fun, but it was a very learning experience, because having generative conversations, having this kind of non-debate space is something new. And a lot of people who came to the games, it was new for them. Most people loved it. Some people struggled. And I became aware there were 2 different types of struggle that occurred more than once when people turned up for the game. So the first type of struggle would be someone who is highly respected in their field. maybe a PhD or they're
Yeah.
a professor or what have you. So they had a lot of weightiness in their opinion, and they were very much in the space of they defended their opinion. And some of them were just struck dumb because they weren't able to say I. So part of the game, those of you who don't know the game, you're not supposed to use the word I. And of course they didn't know how to get over the kind of egotistical, and it's not that they're egotistical people, but they're in that space where their ego and their research and their gravitas is very important to them. So that sort of person surprisingly would struggle. They didn't have the mental flexibility to go into the ego-free collective space.
And
so
go and play, just play without.
Yeah. And they wanted to talk about their beliefs and their discoveries rather than exploring something new. So that was kind of an interesting thing. So that's a barrier for a certain type of person. And there's another type of person that you might think initially was very, very different. So someone who's had significant trauma in their lives. So I remember we had someone who suffered a lot of racial abuse. Somebody else who, I think they'd had a number of deaths in their family. A very, very traumatized person. And they too would struggle to enter into the collective space because their trauma was so, how do I say? It was so big in their lives. It was hard for them to separate themselves from it, to come into the we space as well. So although they were very, very different reasons, these people were bound to their personality, and then the narrative of their lives was holding on to them tight. So I've had a lot of thought about that. And I'm trying to design a new version of the Glass Bead game, which has some design parameters in it to help those type of people to engage with the game in a way that doesn't seem challenging for them. So part of the game sometimes is to have an avatar, and an avatar is an extremely useful tool for playing with an idea and having a little role. So I've designed a number of avatars, which and we've tried it with Jungian kind of archetypes, which we felt sometimes brought in too much cultural. Excuse me, I'm just going to cough. Brought in too much cultural weight with it. So I've moved on to using animal avatars and kind of the we might have, say, a lion, and you'll think about courageous leadership, that kind of thing. You might have a turtle, or and I've kind of looked into cultural ideas, perhaps about what the wolf is, and how a wolf might engage with a problem. So I've got a number of different avatars with some descriptions with the avatar into maybe some indigenous background into how that animal is seen to represent meaning in our world. So it's kind of a way of playing through a kind of avatar and a role. So that's one kind of way. We're also going to putting some design, a bit of fun design into it, where if you use an I or a you, which is one of kind of the rules of the game, is you don't get into a debating space. Right. So I'm going to have a little fun thing where you lose tokens every time you use an I or a you. Mm-hmm. So you try not to lose all your tokens, because at the end of when it comes to the harvesting part of the game, you have to pay to speak using those tokens. But if you've been egotistical in the game, you haven't got so many tokens. But if you've
don't
been
you think
very
that
open,
can take away from the focus of the dialogue in itself?
I don't think so. I think because it's just a little side thing. Yeah, it's a little side thing, and then as you go into the main discussion, you kind of drop those. It's just a little kind of little design tweak to just try and help people stay aware of not putting their ego into the game too much. But I think as we played the game and we designed aspects of the game, I plan to do the same with this. So we'll be playing, and we'll design as we go. So there'll be a lot of feedback and, see
I
what
like
works and what doesn't
playing
work.
with roles and archetype. It's a fantastic idea. I think the role playing type of that, and I've done workshop with like business people, and we start with a role playing exercise to get them out of their own skin, and it's been fairly successful for people to loosen up a bit. And this even more than like, and if you do it digitally, you can even use like digital mask and stuff like that to really
Yeah,
play into it.
yeah. There seems to be something that happens with the intellect when you're able to, and you'll find that actors and actresses and people who do improv start to get this mental flexibility. So there's something really beneficial where you can get this, you can flex in your roles, and the ability then to understand someone else's perspective and stand in their shoes. You start to stretch your ability, your understanding, your ability to hold multiple perspectives without becoming, feeling stressed about it.
Yeah, like one thing I've talked to people during this weekend is something I thought a lot about. When I was young, I had a lot of stuffed animals like a frog and a dog and a bear and a panda and stuff like that. And me and my brother, we played it with them and a friend as well. We gave them different personalities and how they acted, and like if someone was funny, someone was angry, and we played a lot with that. And I thought that every kid did that, and I found out like many people have, but some people have never done that outside them role playing thing. And then I started playing role playing games when I was older, but some of my friends were not so good at like play acting and the improv thing is said, but I was struggling with my shyness. When I could hide behind an avatar and things like that was easier, but standing up for people talking publicly was a challenge to me. But there's a format called Picha Kucha when you talk to 20 images for 20 seconds each, so 6 minutes 40 seconds, and they shift automatically. And I've done 11 of those before, and my 12th now. I did it earlier this year, and I said, why don't my friends who was also going to the event, can't you just put together a slide deck for me with 20 pictures I haven't seen before, and I'm going to start talking about the future towards them. And it was really challenging, it was really fun, like doing this improv in front of people live, and there's 20 seconds, so you can't pause and think, you have to go in 2 seconds when you see a picture. And that not everyone is trained for that, and not everyone has that personality type that are comfortable with doing improv in front of persons like that. But maybe if you design the Glass Bead Games that we can use avatar, we can hide behind an animal and even an animal mask and stuff like that in a fun, playful way, so it doesn't become abusive or things like that. If you know what I mean. So we use aggressive animals type, and we become an aggressive setting and abusive in that way, because that can trigger, like you said, other people's trauma if they're So
I mean, I think having a facilitator, so the old Glass Bead game they called Magisters, which is taken from the book and what have you. With the new game I'm designing, I'm calling the Magister Curator, because I kind of like the idea of curating the art that everybody brings. But certainly there is a challenge for different individuals, and people they come with their traumas, they come with their shyness. I have found many people have enjoyed the Glass Bead game because it gives them a voice and a space to exercise
you have
their
your
voice.
minute, and it's only your minute.
Yeah. And if you suddenly feel terribly shy and you go silent, it's actually okay.
Yeah. And
because
no one starts talking even if you're silent.
No. And I think that's a really valuable space, because there are people in our society, many people, who have deeply valuable things to share, and they're not quick speakers, they're not fast thinkers, they're slow thinkers. It takes a bit of time for it to come forward, or they've had no practice because the people around them are so talkative that they don't get to practice saying things. So for me, this is enormously useful. I'm a very chatty, talky person, and I've got some children of my children are quite quiet. And it's learning how to, for the chatty people and confident people, to just shut up for a bit and have this wonderful experience of listening to people who are not like you, and having that and giving them that space where you can listen and be educated. So it is very egalitarian. I'm sure I did have somebody turn up. I'm just thinking about a game that happened right in the early days, who couldn't speak. They became too anxious. So what they did was it was Zoom. So they typed their ideas in the chat, and that was their turn. And that was fine too.
Yeah.
And you might get someone who can draw, or who'll make silly noises, or a little song, or play on. We had somebody. Do you remember who was it? Megan, who played. What was her instrument? I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah.
From Australia.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah.
Was it not banjo? No.
Yeah, I think we had Ben. We have Ben who plays piano a little bit, and it became such a beautiful, rich experience.
Yeah.
And I feel like the game can be designed to include more of that more often. I'd really like to work with people who are looking at developing that. We did some stuff in London with an illustrator as well, which was really fun.
Yeah.
And I do like the in-person games. I was really glad, Michael, to see you doing some. You could tell folks a bit about. You've been doing some in-person Glass Bead Games recently, haven't you?
Yeah, a lot of them, like for very different people, like people in the tech scene, local politicians, people working like in a normal city civil servant that's like never been in the spaces we've been with conferences, workshops, and conversation exercises and things like it's easy for us to like get stuck thinking in our bubble that everyone has done exercise games and workshops on World Cafes and stuff like that, but some people have never even heard of this, and that's what the people I brought the Glass Bead Game for, and it worked perfectly for them as well.
Yeah.
So if you keep it as like a very short introduction and very simple, not fleshing it out, over explaining it, just get them going and experience it. That's the thing I've discovered. So as simple as possible, just the 2 rules and a few guidelines.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, this whole notion of a simple rule can bring forth a lot of complexity and interest, and too many rules actually suppress it.
Yeah.
So that's an I don't think that's a pattern just with the Glass Bead Game. I think it's a pattern with many things. I don't know if you've ever looked into Stephen Wolfram's Mathematica and about his.
I've seen talks about it. Yeah.
So I read his book. It's super interesting, but it was what I find absolutely fascinating, and I think in a strange way the Glass Bead Game is like that with meaning, is that setting up some very simple initial parameters and allowing that little pattern to generate and generate and generate and generate, you come up with something extraordinary. And I think that's what the game does.
Yeah. And one of the things I've thought the most about when I did this like game for people who have, I did it for the people who are working with social interaction, and they never ever even questioned themselves what social interaction is, and that's what was most mind-blowing for them. Okay, we have not even explored our main purpose for our work, and I talked to some politicians. We talked about our city, and the question was, what is our city? The name of the city, and I have never thought about what the thing they're actually leading, what it is, because it turns out there's so many more things that they thought it were, especially when you hear other people's perspective. You think like that, and things like that, and that's why I think the beauty of the game is you can ask yourself a city, what is collaboration, what is innovation, for people that supposedly are experts in that field.
Well, this is the whole thing. We're going back to what we spoke about right at the beginning. Is if you start and you think you know what the end is, you're not really exploring.
No. Then you're stuck in your own expertise. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're also sitting in this very like narrow rut, aren't you? So once you open up the space to kind of collaborating and listening to other perspectives and being open to new ideas, I think it's extraordinary. And I think it's not really, I mean, the Glass Bead game is a container and a way of having a generative dialogue. It's not the only way. There are a number of different methodologies for generative dialogue. I know that Thomas Steininger and Elizabeth Daybold do what's it called? What do they call it? Emergent dialogues.
I'm not familiar with
From
the name. I
Berlin,
know
I
of them,
don't
but
know.
I can't remember the name now.
Yeah, they do. They do these emergent dialogues. I did a lot of work with them at one point, and it's a much softer, slower process than the Glass Bead game. I said the Glass Bead game is fast and dirty. It's a kind of
Fast
almost
and
fast and
dirty.
dirty way
Yeah,
to get
I like
there.
playful and like you tumble
It's
around.
very playful.
Yeah.
Or something like David Bohm, the mathematician, he designed this thing called Bohmian Dialogues, which is an extraordinarily slow and very beautiful way of dialoguing because it's actually talking in a group with absolutely no goal in mind at all. And that goes over several weeks. And they're sort of a few hours each session. So there are different ways of exploring these kind of really interesting, generative, driven by curiosity spaces. That's what I love about it.
Yeah. So how do you see this going forward? And I've been like trying doing it for small groups on a local level, or I contact the event manager and say I can host a Glass Bead game there and stuff like that. And some have picked it up, but most people don't know even why it should be useful, even when I explain it to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think really we need to develop and I'd like to develop a much stronger kind of online presence where there's some explanation of how the game works and how it can serve people and how it can serve groups. And I think having a fairly, at the moment, we're kind of tabbing stuff into Zoom. I think having a space where the game functions in a very clean way. Eric runs really lovely games, but it's actually quite a loose space, and I think it really needs a bit of, especially if we're going to use it professionally and in groups, we need a fairly tighter space and container for it. Certainly designing the card game, so the card game you can actually buy it and get perhaps a video on instruction how to run it. So it's not difficult. It's not rocket science, is it really?
No.
It's not difficult to do. It's not difficult to understand how it works. So I think just creating some formats for that. I have some other work I've been doing with using the Glass Bead game for really large groups. So enabling people to, the idea is that it allows, even if you've got 100 people in the room, it allows everybody to engage intellectually with the process. And then the idea for the larger groups is to be able to get them to harvest and feedback their ideas in a way that's coherent for the whole group. So there are some tools, there's some extra
the harvest
tools for that.
I have a friend who's working with collective harvesting. How do you harvest the essence of a thing? And he started experiment like using the transcript of a recorded meeting and put it into generative AI and to summarize what's going on and stuff like that. So that's really interesting. That's not what we never like do a proper harvest. We just talk afterwards. Sometimes we write down things, and then we have. I try to write down the best ideas and quotes that come out of a session, but not we don't do it in a structured way.
Yes. So like you, Michael, I do my own personal harvesting from Glass Bead Games, and I have to be honest, it's been actually the foundation of all my work.
Yeah. That's the same here. Not all, but many of my new ideas came from Glass Bead Games.
So much. I mean, I just owe it to Glass Bead Games. Now, at the moment, because of my lifestyle, because I've moved and I'm running this small holding, and I'm starting like a community here in West Wales. I've been hugely busy offline. It's been very, very difficult. So, but to get back on, to kind of develop this as a tool I really want to, put some work into that and work into developing that as a tool. But in terms of it's just informed all my work since then. I think I couldn't really go back to the way things were before because it's just been so beneficial for me as an individual.
Yeah. So we have around 10 minutes left. And if anything else
Okay.
you want to bring up to the table around this?
Yeah, I think this theme about choices
Yeah.
and wise choices, and there was something that, and it's come up from the games really, is how people can become very anxious. I was certainly on the stir with oh gosh, what's his name? Peter
Peter
on the
Lindbergh.
stir. Yeah, and we did some groups together and what have you. There was something that kept on coming up was the level of anxiety amongst everybody was quite high. And there was a lot of anxiety about decision making as well, and a lot of anxiety about the decisions of others. And it is difficult. We're in a place with our planet and what have you, where we're in a very difficult space. There's a lot of violence, a lot of poor decision making by politicians and what have you. But I think this anxiety about choices, I think, can be counterproductive. As we were saying, just to, it's come up sort of over this whole conversation, is trying to second guess and get it right, I think, is counterproductive because it's creating too much stress. We're worried. I've got to make this decision about that, or this career decision, or that career decision, and what have you. And I think you can't predict the future. You could marry someone who seems absolutely wonderful. You've done all your tick boxing, and goodness knows they change their mind about who they are and what have you, and you end up in a nightmare marriage or what have you, or you choose a course at university, you did all the right decision, you agonized over it, and in the end you don't like it. I think kind of the thing we said earlier about reciprocal opening, about making choices that try to keep things open, not that you have to make choices. You can't sit on the fence forever. Like forever, I'm not going to make my mind up. I'm not going to marry anyone and then I'll be all right. But not to put so much stress onto it all. Be a bit more playful with it. Know that the universe is going to offer you lessons. Doesn't matter what path you take. You're going to be learning stuff. And I think this is the grand experiment of humanity, is to, number one, experience things. And that doesn't matter what decisions you make, you will be experiencing stuff, and you can learn from those experiences. I think that's to take the heat off this kind of wise choices, this horrible burden of I have to be wise, I have to be wise.
No, it's not about that. We talk I think it's about learning. Looking back, seeing the good choices and the bad choices, and learn from them, and see the larger picture, how it's connected to other people's choices and what they've learned from their experience, and puzzle it all together.
And there's something else. I was going to talk about my parrots. So I have two Alexandrine parrots, and they make a funny noise. It's sort of like this. I can't really do it. Sort of, and they kind of. They do it when they're cross about something, and they do the same noise when they're pleased. And we were thinking, what can this mean in parrot language? It's the same sound. And what we realized was they are anticipating a direction from something they are not so pleased with to something they like. So they may be perfectly happy, but I've got a pistachio. So they're really excited about pistachio. Or they've been having a fight with each other, and they're anticipating moving from the fight to something that's not so bad. So their language is direction only. It's not about the level of pleasure or pain. It's just about the direction from something less good to something better. And I think sometimes also with choices, if we don't put so much weight on absolutes or getting to a goal, just get in the right direction.
Exactly.
Let's just go just make it a little bit better than before.
Yeah.
And that stops us being tense about our choices. It helps us relax. It helps us open up and be generative, flexible, and curious.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, so that's the
And that's
message from
it's okay
my
to take a
parrots.
choice back. Wait,
Sorry?
it's okay to take a choice back.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
commit always.
No, because we're human. It's flexible. Whoops, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, that we're in this is
Yeah.
an experimental space.
Yeah.
Let's experiment. Let's have some fun. Let's have some curiosity. But let's trend in the right direction.
Yeah. And that's why they talk about in company and they talk about iteration and pivoting and things like that. And it's
Yeah.
okay.
It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jan, for joining. Anything you want to ask me before we?
I don't know.
No.
What should I ask you? Yeah, what games are you enjoying at the moment? I mean, you've played role-playing games. Are you playing anything fun?
Yeah, and next weekend it's Easter, and here in Sweden we have the world's oldest continuously running board game and role-playing and card game events called GothCon in Gothenburg. So every Easter since 1996 I've been there with my friends. I skipped two when my kids were young, but after that I've been there for every year, and we meet up and we play board games. There are around 2,000 people there, and it's board games, card games, role-playing games, miniature figure games, and things like that. And there's so much warm, welcoming, jolly people there. Because if you want to play games, physical games with others, you have to be inviting and social, or else you have no one to play with.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
computer games you can play alone at home, but the social type of game here.
Yeah.
So that's what.
I think playing games. Honestly, we should play games, and then we should play life like we play games.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great way forward.
Play more, yeah. I think there's some great game conventions, like physical game conventions in UK.
Yes.
In the US, you have Gen Con and PAX and things like that. And another and a board game geek con and stuff. And here in Sweden we have a lot of small ones. And the big board gaming convention is in Essen every October, where it's more like a fair. There's not, but people are playing everywhere in hotels, in restaurants, and things like that. There's almost 200,000 people there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Play on,
yeah. we played with words, we play with thoughts, and we play with each other. In a jolly way. Not the like there is a connotation you can play someone in a bad way.
No, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me and for a really, really fun chat.
Yeah, and of course, if you're interested in joining our Glass Bead Games, we still do our on Zoom at Sundays, 9 p.m. Central European times, 8 p.m. UK time. And me and Jen, we're certainly, at least I have a lot of time over still, but maybe but I'm certainly, just contact me for a custom game.
Yeah, custom games would be fun.
Yeah.
And also, as I develop the game and the card game and what have you, I'll be sharing with you, and you can share that with your network, and have some fun. Be curious.
Be curious and play more. Yeah. Thank you, Jan.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed.